Hey everybody, welcome back. What we're going to be doing today is a Firebase hosting demo. Now, this is going to have a few moving parts, and I'm going to deviate slightly from the code lab um, about a third of the way through because it has you go out to a secondary service for writing code and things like that. I'm just going to use my local terminal. Feel free to follow along with me if you would like. If you want to follow the code lab, that's fine too. Just be aware I haven't gone through and done their steps specifically. But what we're going to be doing here today is, again, Firebase hosting is kind of the key here, but we are going to be using TensorFlow.js to do a little bit of machine learning, a little bit of model creation, training, and using. So basically, we're going to link up the machine learning lab or the machine learning module with a little bit of Firebase. And just as a bit of a refresher, if we go over to Firebase, it is a different interface than we're used to with Google Cloud, right? Firebase has its own console, and you can link up Google Cloud and Firebase, but you have to take some extra steps to get there. And now this Firebase project I'm going to be building here, just to kind of wrap up the little intro, I'm going to be running it from my local machine. So this terminal you see here is just my computer. I'll be running a local host. Um, if you want to go the route of a compute engine virtual machine to get started, that's fine. But basically what we're going to be doing is running a local instance and then pushing it up to Firebase hosting. So this lab is kind of interesting to introduce some of these topics for you. And what you're going to see is that with this lab, it's kind of backwards in a way. So we're actually going to start training a TensorFlow model using TensorFlow.js. So we're not actually using Python, we're using JavaScript here. We're going to be doing that locally, generating some files, and then doing the Firebase side of things. So the first couple of steps here, if you start reading through it, don't worry too much because it's going to walk you through the Firebase aspects in like step 4, I think. So we have a little bit of time before we get there. So step 1, I'm going to make a directory, so called tf demo. And I have already gone and installed the Firebase CLI on my machine, and there's some links in here to get you up and running again, like step 4. I also have Python 3 installed, and I'm going to be using the web host or the web server from that. We'll see that in a moment. And basically, I've done all well, I haven't done the npm installs yet because I reset everything. But I'm going to be using nano to copy and paste some stuff because I think I mentioned this before. My local instance of Vim is not great for copying and pasting. So here I'm creating train.html, I called it index.html. Train.html, same thing. What we're doing here is we are importing the TensorFlow library from the JSDeliver site, just basically hosts libraries. And then we're going to import a file called model.js. In this model.js, it's not super important what is in here, really. Again, we're just hosting some stuff in general. But here we're doing TensorFlow, and it's kind of a nice little thing. And this is the part of the lab where they mentioned go out to an external site to do your coding. They'd mentioned glitch.com. I'm just going to run it locally. Basically, all you need is a local host, so a local web server. I'll be using Pythons. You could use WAMP or MAMP if you're Windows or Linux and you need a local host. You could set up a LAMP stack if you want, if you're in Linux land. But I'm going to go ahead and just use this. So nano model.js, copy and paste. So I've got some training data here. So this is going to be basically a model for estimating the cost of a house for square footage. We have some testing data. We have some training data. These are just going to be consts that we use to build up our model. All right, so we got the HTML code there. And again, I don't necessarily care as much about the code in here. Obviously, you should know what it's doing, right? But kind of the goal is that we are going to be hosting thing on Firebase. And again, we're hosting machine learning here. So this is setting up TensorFlow. So we have training tensors, testing tensors, construct a model, perform training. Training is an asynchronous and evaluate set of functions here. Again, this is basically the JavaScript version of what we have seen in Python already. So copy and paste this code, formatted absolutely beautifully in Nano. Really need to get Vim working. If I were to do this in Vim, and why I keep mentioning that, like you would just keep tabbing over and tabbing over, probably because I have auto tabbing set. But we have our code here. What's going to happen is that we are going to run a local host on this code, generate some model files, and then we're going to copy that over to Firebase. So the last step here is to save our model. And they say in the code lab, this goes into the evaluate function. So I'm going to go ahead and drop it right here. Make sure you put this inside the evaluate function, otherwise it will not work. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now I have, simple website. And the goal here is just to run this TensorFlow code, generate a couple of files, and copy those over into our Firebase project. So to get my server running on my machine, this is where I'm deviating here. I'm going to go python3-m http.server. As if you're not aware, you can get a baked-in localhost server in Python. And by default, serves it on 8000. So this will take a moment to get up and running. So I'm going to let that kind of sit. It's going to pop up a message in probably about a minute saying, do you want to download these files? So while that's working, let's go ahead and go over to Firebase now. So we don't need this terminal anymore. Don't need this stuff right now. Still waiting. Okay, let's bring this tab here. And what we want to do is set up a project in Firebase. So I'm going to create a new project. Let's call this TF hosting demo. Again, different console. Done yet? Double check, make sure there's no errors. If you're running JavaScript, check the web console and developer tools because, yep, there we go. Here are our files. So I'm going to, these are just in my downloads. I will leave them there for now. But let's get our Firebase up and running. So we are creating a project. We don't really need analytics for this. I guess we'll leave it on because the lab says to. So we're going to go ahead and continue. We're going to use our default account for Firebase. Okay, we should see a new project. So this will take a moment to spin up. Okay, this is where the lab starts walking you through installing things locally. Now I am using the Ubuntu for Windows terminal here, and I actually don't need my web server anymore, so I'm going to cancel out of that. I have gone through, I have Node.js and npm installed. Now what I'm going to do is sudo npm install -g firebase tools. And depending on how you have npm set up, this is the package manager for Node.js, by the way. You may or may not need to sudo this. My module library is protected, so I need to run sudo, meaning I have to give it administrative access. But if you are going through and doing these steps, this is not going to work in PowerShell. It's not going to work in DOS or, sorry, the Windows command line. These are Linux specific. Now you can use other environments. So you can use PowerShell, you can use the Windows terminal, but different steps for those. Only real requirements, we need Node.js and we need npm, which are generally platform independent. This install is going to take a few minutes. Just as a warning, you're going to get something that looks like this. So again, I already have Node.js, I already have npm. I am installing the Firebase tools. This will take a moment. After this downloads, basically it's pulling all the libraries we need into a local, our local folder. Error, permission denied. But I gave you sudo access. Interesting. Let's try this again. This literally worked about a half hour ago when I ran through this lab. Maybe it doesn't like the fact that it's already existing. Rebuild. Okay, well, let's just try Firebase Login. If you get this error, no JIP rebuild. Let's do a quick search. npm config set user 0. Let's try that again. Could be an issue with the fact that I just installed it and it doesn't like that. We will see. Depending on how this goes, I may or may not leave this in just to show you some of the problems. Basically, I am not a massive fan of Node.js or NPM. I get really annoyed with package dependencies and all kinds of headaches that come along with that. So I try to use it as sparingly as possible. Yeah, that worked. So basically the trick here is to save or set yourself as a different user. And I'm going to go ahead and add that to my notes for you all in case you run into the same problem. But we now have the Firebase tools installed. And this is installed on our account. So let's go ahead and log into Firebase. And again, I have the Firebase CLI installed on my local terminal. That's where you follow this link right here. So let's go ahead and log in. It's going to give me a big long link. Oh, okay, it's not going to. Let me exit out of this terminal and get into a new one because I want you all to see Firebase Login. Okay, it's already logged me in. I guess I could do Firebase Logout. Basically, I ran through this lab before and it cached my credentials. So Firebase Login, give me a big long link, or sorry, yes, collect statistics, go to this URL or it pops it open for me. I'm going to log in. Basically, Firebase is going to hook up with my Google account. Let's go ahead and allow that. I can close this window. I am now logged in successfully. So my local machine is logged in. Don't need this page anymore. So we have been granted access. Wonderful. Now we are going to take the things that we have done and deploy it to Firebase to be hosted. So we want to, let's go ahead and do Firebase init. This looks so, well, it actually looks the same. Okay, I thought it looked different. We want to arrow down, hit the space bar to select hosting, get a nice little terminal user interface here, and hit enter. I'm going to use an existing project, and since I'm logged into Firebase, I can pick the project that I just created. We want to use public as our public directory, and everything else we can pretty much leave as default. So it says say no to configure as a single page. We see that N is capitalized, so that's our default. And now we don't want automatic builds. We're not doing any continuous deployment. We have a project for Firebase ready to go. So we see public. Public has an index and a 404 page, meaning we have our home page and the error page. And we also have a Firebase.json file. So all we need to do now is move the files we want to deploy to the public folder. So let's go ahead and do that. What we need, that JSON file and the .bin file that we created with our model. So I'm going to go ahead, download these two files here, copy these two files here. And this is deep into the root of my Linux system. So your path may vary, and I called this TF demo. Here's our public. Files are now here. I do an ls. I see, sorry, ls public. Here's my two files. I think this .zone identifier kind of came when I copy and pasted it. Not sure why that's there. Interesting. Let's get rid of that. Just looks like extra stuff that I don't want in there. Okay, bit of cleanup, just issues on my end. So we see our HTML pages, our JSON, and our .bin file. Now we need to edit our index file, and we see a bunch of boilerplate code, and we want our title to be not welcome to Firebase hosting. Let's call it CIS655 TensorFlow.js hosts hello world fun times / title. All right. And actually, let's see. So I'm actually going to go ahead and edit this whole thing. So let me go ahead and do nano public. No, this is where my workflow needs to change. I want to delete everything out of here. Now I want a nano public index empty file. I'm just going to copy and paste this guy here. Paste anyway. Exit out. Go into Vim so that I can use my handy dandy keystrokes. CIS655 hello world TensorFlow.js. Good enough. All right, so what we're doing here is we're getting rid of all the boilerplate code. Now, it included every single Firebase module available, and the intent is that you delete out the ones that you don't want. So the only thing that we care about is TensorFlow and a script. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get that. So we're going to, let's see, we need a style sheet. So we need, let's just go into public. Vim, we'll leave style in for now. It says vim script.nanoscript.js. What we're going to do here is we have an asynchronous function prediction. So basically we're loading our model that we trained. So we see that JSON file there. We're going to use the TensorFlow library and we're going to make a prediction. And it's a very elite prediction. Okay, so we save this off. And let's do a quadruple check. So we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We didn't create stale.js yet. Yeah, we don't need anything yet. So let's just do touch style.css. So we at least have the file there. Okay. We are at the same state that they need to be, or that we need to be. Now, let's go into the root of our project. So I am in this folder. I see my Firebase. I see my model, index, public. Let's go ahead and try it out. Firebase Deploy. What's going to happen is that the local Firebase CLI is going to deploy whatever we have in public to our Firebase application. And we get a hosting URL. And we can check this out. Look at that. Our site has been deployed. I don't want to hit, okay, F12 is not just the console. I'm going to do Control-Shift-J, thank you very much. Here is our prediction. So for a 1337 square foot house, looks like our prediction is 1.3 million about. And I'm guessing we're doing California square footage, maybe. So we actually see the same thing there. All right, so we have a deployed app. This is being hosted on Firebase, right? We built it locally. We deployed it from our local instance, pushed it up to Firebase. We are now hosting it up there. All right, so we can hide that. So if we go into our Firebase, we can look at analytics, we can handle versioning. We basically can just kind of check in Let me make this a little bit bigger here so we get the sidebar. Let's look at our hosting page. Again, console looks a little bit different. We have a release that has been built. Here's the time and the date. We see that this is current. We could go and do a lot more in here as well if we want. Like we could add storage, we could add authentication. These are all very, very, very easy to add on. But again, it's all going to be based on how much you want to pay. So if this is a cloud service, you will be billed based on usage. So we have a functioning app, which is delightful. So by default, at least here, you get 10 gigs of bandwidth per month. If you go above that, you will start getting charged for it. So to clean up, just have to delete the Firebase project. And that is honestly pretty much it. So I could, let's see, let's slide this over. Let's run another prediction. Oh, we're gonna get very, very similar. Let's change it up. All right, so let's go into public. Let's vim our script. Let's change our prediction to what's a better number? Can't think of anything appropriate for work. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's amazing. It's the same combination I have in my luggage. Let's do Firebase Deploy again. So I made a change. It's going to go ahead and redeploy it. It auto-versioned for us. So let's pop open Firebase here. Ignore all the other stuff the professor has going on his screen. This is not the project I want, thank you. I want paste. I know I didn't delete you yet. Wrong window. Let's say that's the wrong window. There we go. Okay. Refresh our hosting page. I now see 2 versions. Would you look at that? If I go ahead and rerun this, maybe I have to, yeah, okay. So I did a Control-Shift-R because it cached the answer. Prediction is now a little bit different. So we have deployed TensorFlow.js. We have deployed a website where we could basically do whatever we wanted with it. Pretty easy to get up and running. So yet another way that we can host something. Alrighty, we're getting way long for what this video should have been. Hope it was useful for you. I will see you all next time. Bye, everybody.